Hi, this is Will Tomlin, and welcome to my journey through heart transplant.
I always tell families that when the patient's listed for transplant that we're talking about a 6-month wait. It may be much less, like the same day, or it may be much longer, like years.
I was born with Epstein's anomaly, which is a malformation of one of the valves in my heart. So we started exploring options at a young age, and we had an open heart surgery at the Mayo Clinic when I was just 5 years old. And while that did help to fix the issue, the underlying problem still remained. So when I was 11 years old, we had another open heart surgery at UCSF in San Francisco, which was intended to repair the original surgery's repair, but overall it was still pretty much ineffective at fixing the underlying issue. So then we started exploring other options, and eventually we narrowed it down to heart transplant as the best option for me to live a better life. And we believed it was the right course of action, and so we started going through with the process of getting listed at UCSF. After running through all the tests that are required to get listed, we were listed in the summer of 2022. But after 6 months of being listed at UCSF, we started looking for a second opinion, and we found UCLA, which has a very experienced team. And so we went down there, showed them all of the test results, and they concurred with the results and also believed that transplant was the best option. But we decided to switch to being fully listed with them. Their more experienced team was more to our liking, so we fully transferred over to UCLA. And despite the distance, the extra experience that the team had really made it worthwhile for us. So they also pull from a larger area for their transplants, so that the wait time would be a little bit lower there as well.
The way the transplant list works is through a combination of wait time and priority. There are 4 statuses on the pediatric list: 1A, 1B, 2, and 7. 1A is for patients that are in most need of a heart, and it consists of patients who are bedridden in the hospital or on bypass machines or ECMO that need a heart soon to continue living. 1B is similar, as it's for patients that need a heart soon that are not stable enough to get far from the hospital. 2, which is the status that I listed at, is for patients that are relatively stable with no urgent need for a heart. In most cases, children on status 2 are able to continue to live at home and are able to function independently. Status 7 is a little bit different, as it's a sort of hold status if you're temporarily ineligible, such as having an illness or being too far from the hospital. While you don't accrue time, you will also not lose it. We were officially listed on the summer of 2023 at UCLA, and earlier this year they offered me a chance to try a medication that would require me to stay in the hospital but may increase my heart function. So we of course said yes, and in mid-July me and my family drove down to UCLA with the quiet hope of also receiving a heart while I was in the hospital.
Hi, this is Will Tomlin reporting live from the hospital. We got my melanoma drip, and it's making itself known very clearly. It's great. Nurse is on the way.
But as luck would have it, after being admitted into the hospital on Monday, July 22nd, the doctors received a call for a possible match late into the night on Friday, and by Saturday morning, plans were put into place to go through with the surgery early in the morning on Saturday, July 28th.
I mean, we always joke that the surgeon always seems to happen in the middle of the night. They obviously don't want it to happen in the middle of the night, but we have to kind of coordinate it because ideally, the shorter the distance, the closer the heart is to where the recipient is. So because we want a heart that has what they call less downtime, so less time out of the body.
On the morning of the 28th, they began preparation for surgery very early, and I was eventually wheeled to the OR at around 8 o'clock. And after saying bye to my parents one last time, I was wheeled into the operating room. There was a bit of a wait time as they confirmed that the heart was en route, but after eventually getting the confirmation from the helicopter that everything looked good, I was put under, and that was the last thing I remembered.
I mean, I think it's quality of life. I mean, I think it's amazing for us when we see some kids who The parents said, oh, they're always, they're pretty mellow. They don't really do a lot. They're kind of quiet. They play by themselves. They get a heart transplant, and all of a sudden they're out and running and playing, and their whole different personality has been kind of released.
Now, the first week was a blur in my memory, and honestly, it was pretty miserable. I was on so many medications that I don't remember a thing for the first 48 hours after transplant. However, despite that, I was able to get back up on my feet again for about 100 steps. Walking was a big challenge, but very necessary given how my day was spent mostly in bed, and most of that time was spent watching TV, or on the rare occasions I did get out of bed, it was to go to the restroom, which was an extreme challenge. I'll spare the details, but suffice to say, it was not fun at all. However, all things considered, recovery was incredibly quick and my condition soon began to improve. Hello, this is Will Tomlin reporting live from the UCLA hospital. We are nearly exactly a week out from the heart transplant. Right now, I am feeling good, had an amazing French toast breakfast, having a great night's sleep now, able to keep my food down. After the struggle of the first week, the rest of the time in the hospital was pretty smooth sailing. The only thing that really remained a challenge was dealing with the drainage tubes that were still in my chest, but eventually those got taken out as well. What's up? It's Will Tomlin. It is currently August 8th. We are 11 days after the procedure. Right now, I finally got my first little bit of fresh air, got an amazing view of a car garage. I'm out here in the Child Life Center, just hanging out. Been doing good, recovery's good, and back in normal clothes. Just got a little bit of bandages left, and a little bit of wires holding me down, but other than that, I am moving around, so it's going good.
A lot of times, the biggest risk in some age groups is compliance. When kids are sick, they have no problem taking their medication because they want to feel better. But when they start feeling better and they start feeling like, they've got other things they need to do, they want to, whatever it might be, they start to forget about taking meds on time, and it becomes less of a priority.
However, before being released, I had to learn a few things about living life with a new heart and the restrictions that I now had and the directions that I had to follow. A large part of the education was focused on dietary changes, as there were a few things that were off the menu for me, mainly any raw or undercooked meat or seafood, uncooked deli meat, raw eggs, a bunch of random fruits, and a few other general guidelines that I needed to follow, like not eating anything that's been left out for more than 2 hours. The other big thing was medication, and at the time of leaving the hospital, I'd be taking around 30 pills a day, and there would be some that I'd take in the morning, some that I'd take in the evening, or some that I'd take both, so it was super important to have that all down. And they pretty much fell into 3 categories. The first would be anti-rejection meds, which was tacrolimus and mycophenolate, which were the main drugs that were making the transplant really work. The second category would be meds to supplement my weakened immune system, and the third category would be meds that were geared towards countering the side effects of other medication that I was taking. And while the amount of pills I am taking drastically decreased, there are still a few that I'd be taking for the rest of my life on a very strict schedule. I needed to have them at 8 in the morning and 8 in the evening, and if I was even an hour late, I'd have to rush to the emergency room and hope I got there before it's too late. But after a lot of struggle and a lot of hardship and a lot of change, I was eventually discharged from the hospital 14 days after my heart transplant on the 12th of August, which began the next step of my journey, which was far from over because after heart transplant, you have to spend the first 3 months readily available, so that meant 2 months and a week left of hanging out in LA.
Typically, for the first month or so, it's every week. Then it's kind of every 2 weeks, and then depending on the course, we can go to every month, and usually when we get to like the point where it's every 2 months to 3 months, then we're kind of into more chronic management phase.
After finally getting out of the hospital, I was able to see the apartment that me and my dad would be living in for the next 2.5 months. Being in a 400 square foot apartment certainly has its ups and downs, but we made sure to keep busy. It happened to be my first day of junior year, just 3 days after getting out of the hospital, and I was initially concerned about how being 400 miles away from school would affect my academic year. However, with the help of my incredibly understanding counselors, I was able to continue to go to my current school through home hospital, which is a program where students with illnesses that prevent them from attending class can do school online. I had an amazing home hospital teacher that helped me through many challenges, including doing AP Calculus completely online. I also had to go to my regularly scheduled medical appointments and blood draws, often as early as 7 in the morning, which was pretty simple as our apartment was only a block away from the doctor's office. Despite all of that, and my dad still working full time remotely, we managed to make room to see plenty of the best destinations in LA. This was by no means our first time in the city, but we didn't let the opportunity to see what we could go to waste while we were down there. We got to see probably the top 20 tourist destinations in LA during our stay, and it was amazing to get to see so many cool places away from home. However, after being away for so long, the homesickness really began to eat at both of us, and we were ready to go home as soon as we got the go ahead from the doctors. That final test they needed to run is called a catheter biopsy, where they insert a long, flexible tube into my veins to grab a tiny piece of heart tissue in order to test it for rejection. The operation went smoothly, and they found no signs of rejection, so I was finally cleared to come home October 25th, almost 100 days since I first arrived. My family and I packed up our Westwood home, and I was Sacramento bound a few days later. It took some time to transition back to my new normal in Sacramento, and as part of this process, I've had some time to reflect on my journey that my family and I have been through these last couple months and really these last couple years. I am so grateful for my support system and all the people that helped me face this challenge and emerge successful. This process would be impossible to navigate alone, and I would not be here today without the tireless efforts of my parents to help me live my best life. In December, I returned to UCLA for the 24th Annual Heart Transplant Winter Celebration. These events celebrate the patient's successes, but also serves as a way for the transplant team to see the fruits of their labors. Patients get a chance to enjoy themselves in the company of other kids who have this shared experience and understand what they've been through, while doctors get to see and hear about their patients thriving as a result of their expertise and hard work to improve each and every one of these kids' lives. While the time spent living in LA is over, the experiences that I've had and the lessons that I've learned will stay with me forever. Transplant is a lifelong process, and as I figure out how to live a new and improved life, I will continue to grow and lean on those around me for support. I may be back in Sacramento for the time being, but my heart will always be in LA.